summary of King Ridge, because Rick's a real historian. Been there much more than I have. Rick Curry, one of my dear friends and a man I respect highly. Come and give about a 5-minute summary of King Ridge, would you, Rick?
I suppose the place to begin would be shortly after the conclusion of the Revolutionary War. The nation was plummeting into a great spiritual abyss. There were those prominent leaders in the nation who even prophesied that within 30 years, Christianity would no longer even be heard of. Francis Asbury was riding through this land and began to cry out in his writings, "Where are the men that hunger for the prevailing reign of God?" 1798, a man by the name of James McGready from Gasper River and Muddy River and Red River moves into Kentucky from North Carolina. He was a large and bolsterous man with piercing eyes, whose preaching was thunderous. The Spirit of God began to move in those little river meeting houses at Red River and Old Mulkey and other meeting houses in Kentucky. Barton Stone from Cane Ridge had been brought to Cane Ridge by the leading of Daniel Boone, the pioneer. He's the one who brought him to Cane Ridge. Barton Stone began to hear what God was doing in the communion with James McGready. He, hungry for God, goes to Red River and goes to meet with McGready. He gets there, and in Barton Stone's words, he writes, "As James McGready preached, my mind was chained to his words, and I could feel tremulous in my body the subjects upon which he preached." It was amazing. It would be from that he would begin to come back. And in 1801, we know this amazing gathering at Cane Ridge really started as a communion, a coming together, a synergy. God was sparking fires out of embers in the hearts of hungry people. History tells us that on the Sunday and on the time when the revival really broke out, one account that I read said that Barton Stone was leaving the grounds of the Cane Ridge meeting house. And before he got to the end of the driveway, he heard the wailing of a single woman left alone inside the log house. He returns, and you and I the plight of this majestic place. God shows up 27 miles from where we stand tonight at this place called Cane Ridge. And God began to move in that place in a remarkable way. In the little old meeting house, the balcony today is still in place. At the end of the little meeting house, there are doors, if you've been there, up in the balcony. And that's where the slaves, they would put a ladder up on the exterior of the building. And the slaves would go up and have to crawl through the door of the old meeting house upstairs. They were never to be allowed on the main floor. But when God came, Barton Stone ordered the balcony to be torn out, and they were welcomed as one on the floor, and the Spirit of God out of that place began to advance westward in the hearts of the people, and the abolitionist movement is tied to Cane Ridge, in the heart of the history of those who said God is beginning to release a synergy, a hunger in the earth, and it began to happen in that place. One of my favorite places at Cane Ridge, about 60 feet out the front door to your left in the cemetery. There's a cemetery with a simple stone that marks the headstone of a slave by the name of Bones, an African-American slave transformed by the touch of God upon his life. And in this place, thousands gathered, tens of thousands gathered, many preachers preaching at one time, and Bones, who's now buried there, who lay there for years with no marker, but his family made sure this man was honored by a marker, and he was a slave whose heart was radically transformed. And such a gifted orator was he that they said that he would climb to the top of the highest trees and preach, because the people who wanted to hear him preach were so many. And today we, as Kentucky and the wonderful heritage of this own house, provides for us a wonderful shrine out here, but we still have old mulky meeting houses, and we have these places, old camp meetings. Out of Cane Ridge, there was a guy they called Methodist John, who God began to use to spread the fire of awakening, not just in Kentucky, but even beyond. As the first great awakening, the fuel of what God began to do was poured out upon Kentucky. And so you and I tonight, we're here 27 miles from that place. And somehow tonight, the cry of our nation is the same today. The same today. So we celebrate what God has done in Kentucky's past. But we say that more is coming.